It's 12:30, time to start our meeting. I'm going to turn the podium over to Elaine and let her introduce our guest speaker.
It's very loud.
Y'all hear me? Is it working? Alan Bates, would you please join me up at the front? Here's our old friend, our old friend, extension officer. And he's going to be our speaker today. And I'm sure you all would love to give him a little chat if you have time before he leaves. And I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
All right.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Well, I look around, I see a lot of new faces, but I also see a lot I recognize. It's been a few years. In fact, I've been in this position, this is my 6th year since I've been working for the city. And
Turn that one off.
down here in the echo.
Let me double check this one.
As many of you may have already known, but I still do a lot of the same things I did at Extension. I get a lot of calls from people about trees now mostly, because I'm a certified arborist. I'm also certified in tree risk assessment, so that's something I do for the city on a daily basis, is walk the parks, look at the trees downtown, and try to figure out which ones might be an issue or have some type of issue in the future. And so I still do that. If you're in the city limits, I am still available to come to look at your trees and visit with you and advise you. If you're outside the city limits, I'm sorry, I can't, but I can sure receive emails and text messages and look at your trees and work there and about that. So anyway, I want to throw that out there. So if anybody does have, I spent all of the day before yesterday, about 2 hours actually walking through a POA and looking. After the tornadoes that we had, a lot of people are concerned about their trees and their landscape. And so I walked through a POA and looked at probably 50, 60 trees, just kind of giving them an idea of any hazard or so forth. So anyway, I want to throw that out there before I begin and let you know that if you have tree issues or tree questions, give them to Aaron and he and I can get together or give me a call. I'm listed with the city under Public Works. Today we'll talk about Healthy Orchard, and I know probably a lot of us aren't going to go out and put several acres of trees in, but these things we want to talk about will apply. Maybe you want to put some small fruit in your backyard, in your landscape, or maybe you want to plant a tree or two just to harvest off of. I didn't put in here anything about pruning fruit trees, so I'll just throw this out there at the beginning. I do a yearly pruning class for the city, and that's open to the public. Last year, I know some of you were there. I see you look around. Usually did it at one of our parks. I did it at the park, David Watkins up on Park Avenue. I have several fruit trees in there, and we prune those. And then sometimes I'll do it at Family Park. I also have some fruit trees if you ever walked out there. The problem with family is it's hard to keep them alive. There's a lot of vandalism goes on with fruit trees out there. And even had some pawpaws that were really doing well, and now they've destroyed. So anyway, if you want to get into your pruning, which is very important with your fruit trees, then that will be available. Let's see. Which button? What I thought I put. Okay. So keep that in mind. You could use those in your landscape also. And we all know that our home fruit is always much more flavorful. We get them at the supermarket. A lot of times they have been grown for their appearance rather than their flavor. So if you grow the right ones at home, you can have those maybe light to achieve their good fruit production. And I always say, sunlight equals fruit. That's the reason when I talk about pruning trees, which again, if you want, you're more than welcome to come to my pruning class. In the spring, I'll get with Aaron and we'll get the date out. But it's usually at the end of February, which is ideal time to prune your fruit trees. And I always talk about sunlight. Sunlight equals fruit. And so that's why we prune to an open center for peaches, for example, and so the sunlight can get there. So it's very important to have good, at least 6 hours of sunlight at a minimum, and then preferably morning sun. Fruitfulness of a bud is strongly influenced by the quality of the sunlight it receives. Morning sun's much better. For another reason, it dries out the plant canopy and reduces the potential for disease. Your number one disease you're going to have with most of your fruit trees is fungal. It's usually all fungal and bacterial, but mostly fungal. And fungus needs shade, it needs moisture, and it needs darkness for it to grow. So if we have a sunlight that gets on those leaves early morning, then we dry them out before all that has a chance to actually get going. So it's really important. That's why, and I'm sure you've heard this, that's why we don't encourage that overhead sprinkling. If you overhead sprinkle, even your garden, you promote the disease a lot of times. So it's much better to have, at least around the base of the tree, if you hand water or whatever, try to keep. I've heard people say, well, I water down the leaves because it cools the plant down. Well, you're promoting disease when you do that. So try to keep that water, and that's one of the reasons we like the early morning sun is to dry that canopy out. As I just mentioned, it dries it out much easier. Soil drainage is a big one, and drainage is more important than fertility, actually. If you have a spot, especially in pecan, if you're going to try to grow a couple of pecan trees, they have to have good, if you've ever noticed where most of your pecan orchards are, they're usually up and down a plain area around a river or in the low-growing areas up around the Arkansas River, down around the Red River. Those are always some really deep, sandy soils, and so that's why the pecan does so much better there. So we do need to know what kind of drainage we have on this spot. And this is one that's a challenge. Dig a hole 8 inches wide and 2.5 feet deep. Now that in Garland County is a feat within itself. So that is a good to know because we have such hard, rocky, poorly drainage soils that's the reason it can be a challenge to grow some of these trees. So make sure you have that. And I usually get the question, well, and I have seen it done, can I amend that hole? Can I amend it so that I can grow that tree? Well, you can, but if you've ever studied extensions much when we talk about, especially those that live in Hot Springs Village, when we plant a tree, we try to put back whatever came out of that hole. A lot of people want to go in and put in some really nice topsoil or compost in that hole, which makes the plant really grow well, but it containerizes that plant. If you don't have a large enough hole, most of us dig our hole 2 times, at least a couple times bigger than a root ball. And then if we amend that hole with a lot of really nice growing medium, then the plant had a tendency to just containerize and grow in a circle. It doesn't, because part of the issue of planting in rough soil is for that plant to get established. And when it gets established, it has to learn to grow in that rocky beach. Does that make sense? Because we all want to do that. If you do have to do that, I would suggest maybe a raised bed of some type, or maybe even excavate a large area. I've seen it done where they excavated a large, all the way out to what the root eventually would be, and have amended that soil for that thing. But mainly you want to make sure it does have good drainage. If it drains in 24 hours, you can grow about anything there. If it takes 36 hours, and maybe we just want to grow apples, pears, and pecans, some of your small fruits, especially blueberries, we don't like, and I'm sure it's a term you've heard, wet feet. If you get blueberries, a lot of times I've seen the issue with Phytophthora root rot pretty often. So these are some things you can grow, but you do need to check that drainage before you ever start. If it takes longer than 2 days for it to drain, well, try something else. Okay, I went too far. How do I back up? This may be an issue.
Yeah.
Whoa.
We can flip through and then start off.
Here we go, I got it. All right, one of the most popular fruit trees we want to grow is apple. And we've already had a discussion this morning about apple and some disease issues, but they do require cross-pollination, so you do need 2 different varieties. And you do need, apples have an early bloom period, a mid, and a late. So you want to get 2 apple trees that overlap in their bloom. Does that make sense? You want maybe an early, you want a mid. If you want a late, you want a mid, and so forth. The two I'm going to recommend, one is an early and one's a late. The Williams Pride and the Enterprise are the two most disease-resistant apple trees we have. The problem is, one of them's a late and one's early, so they can't pollinate each other. So what I usually do, if you look at my apple trees anywhere that I've planted in the city, I always plant in a crab apple in the middle of them, because crab apple has a very long bloom period. And so it will help in pollinating your apples, as well as producing a little small crab apple there. If you like those, maybe we'll do some jams and jellies that's edible. And so I recommend the Williams Pride and the Enterprise. You plant a crab apple in between. And if you want to put a pollinator other than the crab apple, you could go with the yellow apple or red delicious. Either one of those is a mid bloomer, so it would overlap with those. The issue there is both of those are pretty susceptible to scab and some of the other diseases that you're in.
What
So
about Arkansas Black?
Arkansas Black is a great one. It is very susceptible to the scab and some of the fire blight and so forth. So that's the only issue. And that's why I put so much emphasis on variety selection. Is find some that you don't have. I'm not saying you're not going to have to do some type of spraying, but to be honest, I haven't sprayed ours that we have up at the parks. But I do have the issue of some scab, which is it'll turn the fruit a little blackish, spots on it and the leaves. But you peel it off, you don't see it. So that's the difference in going to the store and getting that real pretty shiny apple and having one that you grow that maybe you have to get some of the blemishes off of or something of that nature. My dad always told me it's all right if there's a worm in there if you cut him out. If you take a bite and there's only half a worm, then there's an issue. But I always look for those that are most disease resistant. They do have the scab, the fire blight. Because they're in the rose family, they'll have the fire blight also. Fire blight, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me talk about that in my pear. Because pear is the most susceptible to fire blight. Pear are easy to grow. They also require cross-pollination, so you need two. But there's always an exception, isn't there? I grow some keeper. Keeper is a variety that's self-pollinating. It's always better to have another of a different variety to help increase that production. But I use them, I cheat. I use them in my shooting lanes at my hunting place for yardage markers. And then the deer come along and eat the apples, so, or the pears. So. But I don't have any issues with fire blight. I have the keeper. They produce very heavily every year with only one tree. And so that might be something we get. But fire blight is the main issue you have with pear. Now, fire blight is not a fungus. Fire blight is a bacterial infection. And so it usually happens when the bees come to the blooms and they are moving from bloom to bloom, they spread it everywhere. But some of those pear varieties are pretty resistant to it. There are sprays available, streptomycin, I believe, you can use during the bloom stage. And so pears are pretty easy to grow. They're a little more difficult to prune. They want to grow every direction there is. Apples pretty easy, but pear want to grow straight up and they want to get big in a hurry, so you have to cut them back pretty heavy every year. The European varieties are much easier to grow, obviously, than the Asian varieties, and that's mostly what you see. Peaches. Now, I put this statement on here because I got it right off the U of A's website. It said, peaches, obviously, unless you want an efficient spraying program is maintained, it is not advisable to plant stone fruits in Arkansas. And everybody wants to plant a peach. Peaches are separate, you don't need one plant. There has been some development in some of the varieties that the U of A has developed. If you're familiar with those, I always encourage you to use those and anything if you can find them. There's usually an asterisk beside that plant when you look at the U of A stuff. And it shows you that they are the ones that have developed them. But peaches can be, they do a little better in a cooler climate than we do here with all of our fungal problems and issues that we have. There's two things that are major with peach, and that's the black knot, which is, it turns everything, the peach itself will turn kind of mummified. Have you seen those? They get real hard and they darken up and they fall. Another is the plum cucurial, which is an insect, a weevil actually, and it gets in the peach, all stone fruits pretty much, and it will just put its ovipositor in there and put its larvae in there, and you're thinking, I'm fixing to pick my peaches next week, and you go to get them and they've ripened and they're full of worms. And so they're very bad. And then I'll get to it at the end. I had a traumatic experience with my peach tree a few weeks ago. I had to be gone in 2 or 3 days, and I'm picking one, and it's just nearly there, just nearly there. I come back in 3 days, and the raccoons had eaten everything. So we do have to deal with that. I'll talk about pests at the end. But another thing I should mention about peach, if you decide to go that route, be prepared to spray. Because there's organic things now. I mean, anytime you're dealing with any type of bacterial infection, you can use copper fungicide. Copper's organic. You can use those. They work best for that. And then there's also some spinosad, some BT, and those type of things that are out there. So get with Aaron if you want to get. He's got a book that's got all that in that. And if you want to try to go organically with it. But I just wanted to emphasize it is a challenge to grow peaches and stone fruits. It takes work. Where an apple or a pear, you might be able to prune that tree, plant it, go pick it in the fall. But with peaches, and another thing I should say before we leave this topic is you want to know the chill hour of that tree, because peaches have a tendency, if you get some early bloomers, they will bloom and then we'll get a cool spell or a cold snap and you lose all your fruit. So I always, when I was extension, I always recommended at least 750 chill hours. And if you don't know what a chill hour is, a chill hour is once the tree goes dormant, it's the number of hours that's below 45 degrees and above 32 degrees, that the number of hours it takes for that plant to come out of dormancy. So if you get one, a lot of people say, well, we live in the south and might not be that severe a winter. Well, how many's seen it get really warm in January or February? And then 2 days later, we get a really cold spell and it's back down below freezing. Well, that's what's so hard on the tree. Now it's been through its chill hours if you have a low chill hour tree. And it's time for me to wake up. And so it starts its process, and then we get that cold and you lose all your fruit. So I always recommend 750 chill hours. And that way, it's later in the season. You may get your fruit later in the season also, but you have a really good chance of it surviving. Pecan is native. The only one of these we're talking about is native. Now, pecan has the male and female flower both on the same tree. There's always something that's... But the type 1, the male flower that is shed is pollen first before the female are receptive. And the type 2, the female flowers are ready and the male's not ready. So you need one of each. You need 2 trees. You need a type 1 and a type 2. Now, even though they both have their complete opportunity to reproduce on the same tree, they don't come on at the same time. So and I've got some fact sheets at the end you can look at for how to select varieties. But they have a type 1, always you need a type 1 and a type 2. So that way you have 2 different varieties that will pollinate each other. Scab is the major disease with pecans, so look for varieties that are good disease resistant to that. If anybody ever saw a pecan that was really growing well, it turned black, and I've seen that a lot. So scab is a problem with pecan. I wish it had another name. That's kind of a gross name, but it is. It's the one you'll have the most problem with. So we'll always look for some that again are disease resistant. Fig, a really easy tree to grow. If any of y'all, probably a lot of y'all have fig already. So what happened last few years when it got really, really cold? They got burned to the ground, which used to be the norm back when I was young. We used to, every year your figs burned to the ground. The next year, they come back, they do fruit off of the current year's growth. So maybe you'll get some fruit that next year, but maybe not. They are self-fruitful, and so they will bear off that new growth each year. It's real interesting how they are, the pollination is done with a fig. You can read about that. I'm not going to get into it. There's a wasp that bees don't, there is a little small wasp that pollinates those. And it's actually the flower that you're eating. But they are real easy to grow. If we don't have that real cold spell, we're about as far north. If you get much further north here, they get really hard to grow. Always put them, if you can, I have mine on the east side of my house. I get early morning sun that way. It kind of protects it from the winter, if we get a real bad winter. But if it gets so cold as we've been, when it get down in the teens and zeros, then you can about guarantee you might lose your above ground. It'll come back from the roots about every year if it's established. So for that reason, we always try to plant figs in the springtime of the year. If you plant them in the fall, they don't have a real good root structure yet, and we do get a little cold, maybe not that severe. It's hard for them to develop. So I always want to plant fig where, and again, I don't get on a soapbox, but if you're like now, when I deal with trees all the time, well, when's the best time to buy a tree? Spring. All the big box stores have them, everybody's got them out. When's the best time to plant a tree? Fall. So it's hard to figure there, but I will say fig is very easy to propagate. If any of you haven't ever done that, you can scratch that lower limb, just lay it on the ground, cover it with a little dirt, put a brick on it, you'll have a root for it. They're easy to propagate. So brown turkey is one I always recommended. It grows well here, and there's always available. Don't cut me off if I'm getting too long. 5 minutes? Whoa. All right, we're going to go fast. Persimmon. There are native persimmon. We all know that. We've all heard the story of eating one before it's ripe. Our native persimmon is dioecious. It has male trees and female trees. So if you get one out of the wild, you may or may not get a male or a female to get the fruit. So I recommend usually a better choice is some of the oriental persimmons. They ripen usually around August, all fall, and depending on the variety and the weather conditions, you can get figs. They got some really large figs. They're not as stringent like the ones we have. And I've planted some of the Fuyu persimmon is the most world. It's self-fruiter, so you only need one to grow them. So persimmon's another one. Pawpaw, I've already mentioned. Very interesting plant. I'm not going to go into it, but check into how it's propagated and how it gets pollinized. Bees don't. It's always flies that pollinate pawpaws or beetles. And so old school was you would find a roadkill and lay it under your pawpaw and you get flies. Then you can get pawpaws. I will say I have used, I think I mentioned them here, 2 different varieties. The mango, these are hybridized, but mango and sunflower, I put both of those out at family, and I got a real good fruit crop first and second year off of them. Really good. Never got to eat them. You've already heard me say they were vandalized. So anyway, that's a couple there. Pawpaws are a popular thing now. Remember, pawpaws, the reason you can't get them at the store, the fruit doesn't have shelf life very long. You have to be ready and beat the varmints and try to get them when it's ready. Small fruits, another one we might want to, blueberries. The southern high bush is for here. Blueberries are different in North Arkansas than they are South Arkansas. So here we would use either the high bush variety, which are self-fruiters, or the rabbit eye, which are not. You need 2 varieties. Blackberries, there's so many thornless varieties I could go on and on. If you've ever been to Clarksville, to where they develop all the breeds, the U of A, Dr. Clark, I think he's retired now, but he's the one that developed all those. That's pretty interesting. You have blackberries now that produce, blackberries are biennials. First year is called a primocane, the second year is a floricane. And so the first year they're just growing, second year they produce fruit and they die, and then we say, well, I'll give them every year. Well, they'll come back from the roots every year. So Dr. Clark developed a variety called primocane fruiters, which will fruit a little the first year, and then again the second year. A lot of backyard gardens have those now, so check those out. That's with the U of A. Weed control is important as water because weeds will compete for that. I saw a study one time where they planted 2 trees, one right beside each other. One of them they mulched and took care of and kept the weeds down, and that one grew twice as fast as the one they didn't control the weeds. So that's real important. If you do use herbicides, make sure it's the most popular one we always talk about Don't get it on the foliage. It's okay to get it on, kind of protect the trunk, but if you do use it for control. And if you do use a mulch, and that's the first thing I would do to control the weeds, never put more than 3 inches. 3 inches will smother the roots and you can lose trees. So you see it a lot. We've seen the volcano mulching where they put it up so high.
Yeah.
And that's so hard on the root system. So don't go over 3 inches. Fertility, fertilization of fruit should be based on a soil analysis. Where have you heard that before? Results to avoid problems of deficiencies and toxicity. There's no need in guessing. And my next statement, does anyone know a place where you can get a soil test? When I was at Extension, and Aaron's probably heard this, we were, in any speech we did, we were supposed to mention soil testing 3 times. There's my one. I'm not in Extension anymore. So it is. It's real important. Don't guess. You know, don't guess on how much fertilizer to do. That's one thing. pH can take several months, so you need to 6 months. Usually, what we say is, if you have to change the pH, do it 6 months ahead of the time you're going to grow. So if you want to do a planting in the spring, make sure that fall you correct that pH. To me, pH is more important than the fertilization itself. Because pH is what makes the fertilization available to the plant. The way I remember it from school is, suppose you're real thirsty and you want a glass of water, and you get that glass of water and it's frozen solid. Well, it's there, but can you take it in your system? Same way with the fertilization pH. If your pH is down around 5, which it probably is if you hadn't put any lime out in the last 5 years, that ties that up to the point that no matter how much fertilizer you put out, you're only going to get a small portion of it. Am I out of time yet?
3 minutes.
Disease, insects, and critters. I have to throw critters at you. It does require higher pest management inputs. The first step is to reduce the amount of time and effort in buying the good cultivars. I'm going to go back to that. Make sure you get some good plants to start with. Spend a little more money on the plants. Make sure you get the right ones. And I'll tell you up front, if you're trying to get a couple of those I mentioned, you better start 6 months ahead of time, because a lot of people know that. And so they're hard to get, those especially high disease periods. Know your trees and the pests. Be prepared when that time comes. I knew that was coming with those raccoons, and I try to beat them every year, but I had to be out of town for 3 days. So know your tree, whatever it is, and know the pests. A lot of things are endemic to that tree, that small fruit. There'll be things that as an extension agent you're looking for all the time. For when you mention that plant's name, we know kind of what's coming. So make sure you know them. And be prepared when the time comes, because I threw a little example out here I saw a lot. Fungicides were great at preventing fungus, but do a poor job of controlling fungus. So fungicides, when you see the fungus and it's already there, it's a little too late to put fungicide on. So you want to do that preventatively and take care. And the healthier your plant, the better it has to grow. Critters know exactly when the fruit is ready.
You believe that?
How to do. So I have these up there. I just pulled these off of the Extension website. They've been there for years, and I've dealt with them all the time I was at Extension. So tree fruit cultivars that are recommended for Arkansas, I can't emphasize that enough. Small fruit cultivars that are recommended also has, remember I said on blueberries, for example, you have some that grow better in northern Arkansas than here. Pecan production in the home garden also, they'll list the pecans, the ones that are most disease resistant. And all these are really helpful when you get in there and check these out. And then there is one on home fruit sprays for any type of orchard sprays. I'll emphasize again with peaches, if you go with those, you be prepared to do that. And you have to do it, you wait till the blooms fall off. Of course, we don't want to kill the bees. And then after the blooms fall, you would probably have to spray any stone fruit every 7 to 10 to 14 days. And all the way up to about 2 weeks before harvest. So I hate to be downer on that, but that's the truth. And so many people want to grow peaches. But just if you do, I'm not saying you can't, but just be prepared that you're going to have a little more work. All right? When you say on the tree, are you talking about on the,
Already had the fungus on it, like I said, you can't put the fungus on it at that time. Can you wash the leaves off with something to get it off?
probably not. No, it would, usually, let me throw this out there. For an organic control on fungus, the number one thing you can do is remove that fungus once the leaves have fallen. So sanitation is really important. If you have it, it's too late. Once those leaves fall off in the fall and they're all there, rake them up, haul them off somewhere, because they will overwinter and be right back again next year. So be sure you take, sanitation is a really good and important with fungus. Any other questions?
You know, you talk about how peaches are so hard to grow, but what, 50 years ago we had huge peach orchards that were selling. So what, people just gave up, or what happened to them?
The laws changed on the pesticides.
Oh.
Back then, we used a lot of pesticides. And so now to get away from that, it's just so difficult to grow those to control both insect and fungus.
That's interesting.
You mentioned Clarksville, and I got some peaches from Clarksville recently here that were good. What are they doing different?
You have to talk to them, but I'm sure, oh, and I didn't mention this, I'm sorry. In my peach, I was aiming to mention about the new varieties, and it may have been that. They have some that are more disease resistant. And the number one, I'll have to go back. They're all named after White County, which is where they're developed, up around Batesville, up in there. And White River is the name of that peach. White River, it has more disease resistance. And they're working on that at the U of A now, trying to get more that are more disease, less spraying. I thought I saw a question in the back. Anybody else? All right.
Thank you, Alan.
You may or may not know,
I asked Jimmy Diggers what to give him, and he told me to give him a rope and a bunch of gloves.
there you go.
Very good, anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't mentioned, but in a previous life, I was a professional rodeo cowboy. And still participate in some, so thank you.
Okay, we need to get started on our business. Minutes, Marsha Oliver. Turn it on, I don't turn it on. Need lights?
I got it. Thank you, Gail. The minutes were published in our newsletter, and I have two corrections. One, our wonderful speaker, I spelled his name incorrectly, and that has been taken care of. And then on unfinished business D, the plant sale and garden show for 2025. The date is going to be the 26th of April, not the 19th.
Any questions? Okay, those minutes will be filed as amended. Treasurer Denise?
We didn't have much activity. I think the heat got to us all. So we did, there are still some cookbooks out there, and so we deposited 120 for cookbooks, and I've got 20 more. We paid for our storage unit from August 1st through January 31st, $1,244, which if you can do that in your head, it's about $204 a month. So we have, and it's actually 2 units. We had one, climate control, access to their wonderful conference room. So we had one, and then, so we needed more room to add plant sale items out of a garage. So instead of giving us a bigger unit, which would make it really hard to get to it, they just gave us another small unit. So now we have 2 units, and ongoing, as you know, in your own home, you have to keep things in order. So that's one of the issues. And to do that, we have storage bins. So that was our expenses for this past month of July. So our balance, the cash is $49,000. I need my glasses. $183 and 44 cents. 44 cents. So 49, 183, 44. So I just want to say a few things about what's coming up. So the scholarships are being processed. That is $9,200. Then we have voted to help the EHC with some, well, how do I say that? To help the EHC. Did I say that right? And so we will be spending up to $2,500 for air conditioning repairs. So that's another one. So Mary Ann Lanane Johnson passed away recently, and we're going to give a $50 memorial to SIG. Now, don't anybody go to the extension office and say we're giving a memorial, because that is evidently that's bad wording. We don't do that anymore. So SIG will find something to buy for almost $50 or whatever, and we will pay for that. So that will go in honor of Mary Ann. So I also want to mention, what is this, August, September? I think we'll start talking about the budget in September. And then I think we'll vote in October. So, maybe not. So somewhere before the end of the year, we will talk about it and we will vote on it. So just something to keep in mind. Next year's budget will be based on what we think our plant sale will bring in next year. So we're going to be talking about plant sale changes. And so one of the big changes, the result of these changes will be that we aren't going to be bringing in that kind of money. So next year's budget is based on that. The fact that we're not going to be bringing in the big money. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Of course, we'll still have the Coleus Fund is designated. That goes to EHC, most of that. We have the money that we set aside for the detention center greenhouse, because we want to make sure that we keep it maintained and, you know, all that good stuff. And then there's money that will be set aside for the scholarship. So, any questions? Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay, second Vice President report, Lynn.
Okay, we're very proud that we have 94 members here, and we also have 7 visitors. So it was a great meeting today. We had a couple of husbands that came, but they've already left. They just wanted to hear the program. And then we have Debbie Hester. And am I correct that you are going to take the class next year? Stand up so they can see you. We're glad to have people that are taking the class. We have Teresa Clements. Are you also taking the class? Yes. Then we have Karen Owens' daughter. And then we have Pam McNutt, and you're taking the class, correct? Stand up so we can see you. And Cindy Fitbro.
It's Freebird.
Freebird. Oh, right, but it's easier to say than it is to spell. All right, and she's also taking our class, so we're glad to have y'all visiting us. And as for our wonderful working hours, we have 14,166 sanctioned hours. We have 861 and a fourth unsanctioned hours, non-sanctioned hours. And we have 3,982 education hours. All right, so y'all keep up the good work. You know, we're halfway through, so if you haven't got your minimum hours, which that's not very many of you, but a few of you, and we need to get that done because we're getting toward the end of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Project guidance, our first vice president, Elaine Sichter.
I'm not going to stand up, it's too hard. We're doing fairly well on the project chairs and getting people to join and volunteer to be new chairs next year. We still have several large committees and they're the beautification committees that we've got to work on. So I'm going to be contacting those people personally to see what we can do about encouraging for chairs. I recruited 2 or 3 people today, so face-to-face or on the phone are better than text. So I'll try to contact some of you guys soon. And I just have to say one thing. I want to thank Karen Grisham for what she has done. If you all have not seen this or taken the time to read it, she's going to very gracefully send it to Lynn and I so we can put it in the newsletter, because that is some wonderful information about our older master gardeners. Thank you.
Okay, Sherry Davis is on a cruise for the next couple of weeks, so she is not here. Let's go to our county agent report. Aaron?
The main thing I want to talk about is the online training. Just a reminder, we still are taking applicants for it. We'll be doing the interviews for those new master gardeners the last couple of weeks of September, so we're kind of running out of time for that. It'll start in October 2nd, and run all the way through December 9th, so there's plenty of time to do that. A couple of things about your landscape real quick. You probably have seen all the woolly aphids on all your hackberries, and your hackberries look like they're dying. Your hackberries are tough and they'll grow through it, so unless you're really having a big problem with them and you want to call me about it, that's fine. Your mulberries might be having a problem with some mealy bugs. They'll grow through it too. Just make sure you keep all your plants watered. It's pretty hot out there. So.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Okay, let's start our unfinished business. Shar and Pam have something they want to present on the county fair.
Speaking of Pam Bentz, I just got a text message from her. She's in the hospital with a fractured ankle. So she convinced me not to freak out, and her husband would help. So anyway, wish her the best, please. Again, I'm going to repeat a few things and emphasize signups. So our theme is Go Native, and Sheila, it's not Go Naked, it's Go Native. And we're going to tie into that an emphasis on grow what you eat, or eat what you grow, area with herbs and canning, display set up. So I already have a couple people who are willing to help me on that. The Master Gardener Contest, please enter. The Ultimate Potting Party, perhaps instead of trying to be creative, we should have just said, decorate a clay pot. So over there you'll see some of those that have been decorated. And again, the emphasis there is it helps us get a count on how many people attend the horticulture building. The Kids Corner, Jennifer and Mary are doing a Busy Bees setup, and they're going to have 3 tables, an activity on pollination, examples of native plants for pollinators, and then an additional craft for the kids. So the Busy Bees Kids Corner is always one of the highlights of the building. These are the important dates. Saturday, September 7th, I'm not going to read through them. I think you can all read this in the handout. But the big ones are, of course, Monday, because we get entries brought, your planned entries, your craft entries, hopefully youth entries as well. Saturday, September 7th, we do the setup. And then the fair hours are 5 to 9, Tuesday through Friday, and Saturday, noon until 9. And you probably saw that when you got the constant contact sign-up. Confirmed exhibitors, again, I'm not going to read through it. We've added a few more, so far we have 17 confirmed exhibitors for the horticulture building. And if you have any additional ideas, please feel free to reach out if you know somebody, or I've gotten a couple of suggestions for native gardening or nurseries. Again, the emphasis is no selling. It is strictly for education, okay? Uh-oh. I lost the most important part here. All right, let's talk about, that's good. Sign Up Genius went out this week. And for those of you who don't use Sign Up Genius, I have sign-ups over there on the table. If you've already signed up through Sign Up Genius, please don't sign up over there. Okay, it's only if you don't like to use it, go ahead and sign up. We also have the EHC kitchen help. That's a separate sign-up. There is a sheet over there for the EHC kitchen sign-up. If you'd like to work in the kitchen, a lot of people are like, I love working in the kitchen. So the sheets for sign-up for EHC are over there as well. We did have an error, my error. I left off our needs for the kids' corner on Friday evening from 5 to 8. We need 4 people, and I think I already saw a couple sign-ups over there. So that's a separate sign-up as well. Let's see, and then in closing, the county fair, just people get, I think, intimidated by the whole thing when you really think about what it takes to put it together. It's about a 2.5-month project, so a lot of our projects are all year long. The county fair really starts in July and ends in September. And that's kind of a plug to say that Pam and I are looking for people to help co-chair next year. So don't forget to sign up if you have any questions about that. Please let us know. And that's it. Thanks. Oh, wait, one other thing. Ask a Master Gardener booth. That is a separate sign up as well. And you contact Diane Arrington for sign up on that. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, going on to new business, we're going to skip B because we're going to come back to that under new business rather than unfinished. Part C, 1-year grace period on some administrative positions. Now, we mentioned this at a previous meeting that our beautification and education projects, we're going to enforce the rule about 2-year chairs. And after 2 years and you've been a chair, then you need to phase out and somebody else needs to step in. That we have found that there are a few appointed positions that have very difficult, detailed administrative responsibilities that are going to require some very specific training before someone can step in and take over those, such as roster. Roster is something you have to know. You have to get some training to be able to put together a roster. We can't just throw someone in there that's never done it. Another is online reporting. We can't just throw someone in and tell them they're going to be the new online reporting manager if they have never done it and don't know anything about it. Another is service awards. The service awards people have been keeping very specific Excel spreadsheets, and you have to know what's going on in those records and be able to follow them. So there will be a few like that that will have a 1-year grace period to train someone else so that next year they'll be able to get into the same routine that we're enforcing on all projects all project chairs, which is 2 years maximum, and then a new chair will take over. Does anybody have a question about that? Okay. Okay, new business. There's going to be some changes in the plant sale. And Carol and Kay are going to tell us a little about it.
She's sitting back there doing nothing. I don't have anything cute, so you just have to look at me. Okay, the first thing you need to know is we're moving to a one-day plant sale. Hold your applause. It will be Saturday, April the 26th from 8 to 2. Don't worry about writing that down because you're going to get it over and over and over again. We will only be using 2 of the buildings at the fairgrounds, the horticulture building and the one that's hooked to Cloverleaf Cafe. I don't know the numbers. 7. There are 3 other venues happening at the fairgrounds that day. So you'll have to behave. That being said, we're not going to have anything going on outside in the drive. We aren't going to have food trucks. We're not going to have soil for sale, compost. We're going to stay in our buildings. Okay? There was a mix-up on the reserving the date. It's nobody's fault, it just happened, and this is the way we can work it out so that we can have a plant sale at the fairgrounds that's not Easter weekend and not Mother's Day. Sherry Davis is going to coordinate, like be the top dog. So if you have a problem, you can look her email up, she'll be back in 2 weeks, and you can call her. Kay will be over the plant sale, and I'm her assistant or something like that. I don't know. And what she just said, this is it. Somebody's got to step up for next year. So we would love for that person to say, for 2026, I mean, it's a long way off, that they would like to work with us this year so they could learn what you do and what you don't do, okay? Gail McClure is going to go over the garden show that will be in Building 7. And she also needs someone to work with her that would fall in and take it for 2026. We will have exhibitors and the children's area in that building. In the horticulture building will be all the wonderful plants that will grow at Fountain Lake, they'll grow at the detention greenhouse, and that we hope you will grow in your backyard and store in your garage and water them all winter and then show up with them. Another big change is we can't have trash to treasures. I know you're going to have to go to a yard sale. We were told that we have to pay sales tax on anything that is garden tools or garden tool related. And Erin can quote you the paragraph and the line and all that. There's no way we could keep up with what was a garden tool in Trash to Treasures and tell the cashiers you got to charge tax on that and not on anything else. So we made the executive decision, we're not going to do Trash to Treasures. We're just going to have plants for sale.
Can we give them stuff away?
Ma'am?
Can we just give it away?
You can do that from your garage, and I'll give them your address. What is that?
I live behind the gate.
I understand what you're saying, but we don't know another way around it.
No problem.
EHC is going to be providing food for the work day and the plant sale day. You know, we need to support them. They need to make a little money. You're not going to have a food truck. You're not going to have hospitality serving you soup when it's cold and tea when it's hot. You're going to go buy from EHC or bring something from home. And I'm sure they'll let you sit in a corner in there to eat it, okay? We're trying to streamline the event. This is going to be much scaled down from what it has been in the past. And no, we will not make as much money. There's no way. But I can guarantee you that you are going to have a ton of fun, and you will see plants like you've never seen before. So you're not gonna wanna miss it. All you that are going through the training, you will love every second of working at the plant site. And I know this is a lot of information and you're going, what in the world? So Kay and I have an email in that little roster book. If you'll shoot us questions, we will do our best to answer your questions. And you're gonna begin getting on constant contact the date, what we need, what you can do, any changes that come up. We know we can do this and we can make it work. We used to have a one-day plant sale, so we're just going back to that. And, you know, we're master gardeners. What are you saying? 7, 5, 3? 8. It's 8 to 2. It's 8 to 2. That time has kind of been set for us. There's something going on in the arena. The horses are going to be sold again. And there's a quinceañera that will happen that evening in the main big building. So we're going to be working with them, and they're going to work with us, and the Fair Board has worked with us to allow us to have this venue. We are renting the Fair Board. We are renting those buildings, just like before. And Aaron and Jimmy have been to the Fair Board and explained what we need, and they've agreed. Yes, ma'am.
I'm with the Hosta Society. Are we gonna be able to sell?
You would have to talk to Gail, that's not my building.
Yes.
Yes, you will.
Okay, if you got vendors, you have to charge sale tax.
No, we're not having any vendors.
Well, that's what I just
That
said.
was a mistake. Actually, that had been changed 2 or 3 years ago, and then we just found out about it.
The Hosta Society, let me get,
Oh, but you're talking about vendors?
Yeah.
No, we're,
the Hosta,
you're gonna love this. You're gonna be happy. Just listen to her.
any vendor can sell
Right.
in building 7. Each vendor that is a commercial enterprise has to pay taxes on what they sell. If you are a 501c3, you are not required to pay sales tax. So the Hosta Society can sell and not worry about that. I think there is a limit, cap at which, but I don't expect that our sales is ever going to reach that level. But it is part of the financial guidelines. If a 501c3 does meet that limit, then they are responsible for paying their own sales tax. Master gardeners are completely out of the picture as far as what other people do as far as selling.
I'm done. Not sure how I got selected.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Let's just make a mental note here. We're going to have a great plant sale. We will make enough money to cover our budget. We have been making so much money in past years, we've just been carrying it over and looking for ways to spend it. So I think all of us just need to step back and cool off and think, this is going to be a lot more fun. Okay, going to our second item. Now, this one is one that I want you to follow me on, and this has to do with a policy change in what we're going to be sending out in the next couple of days, a change to our policies and procedures, and it's related to our officers. I want to explain up front that part of the reason we are going to suggest this policy change is to make it easier for people to accept a position and not feel like they've got 5 years of commitment out there to being an officer. Also, to make it easier if they worry about the skill sets that are necessary to do a particular job. With those two things in mind, which are often very common statements that we get when we talk to people about becoming an officer. These are people that we know have leadership skills, but they want to run for another office, wonderful, but there's no obligation after those 2 years. Each of those positions is going to have an assistant that we will be electing this year. Lynn has agreed to be a second VP for a second year. We will elect an assistant second VP. During this first year of that person's 2-year term, they learn all of the various things that are necessary in that second VP position. They learn how to do online reporting and manage that because that is a responsibility. They learn about the service awards. They learn how to keep the exception list. They understand about the oversight of the roster. The sunshine, managing the sunshine. There's a whole host of administrative things that the second VP does. So you can think of the person that's being elected as assistant second vice president as a second vice president in training. And then their second year of that term, they are the officer and a new assistant is elected, a new assistant second VP. The same will be true for the treasurer, the same will be true for the secretary. So all of these positions, as the officer rotates off, there's someone that has been working with them for a full year that will step in the next year and know all of the things that are necessary to do that job. And so this will require us to make a slight change in our policies and procedures. It's not anything real extreme. I'll be sending out an article on this, explaining it in a little more detail and how it will all run, but you'll get that in the next few days. We want the policies and procedures, the exact way it's going to be worded, to go out to our entire membership through constant contact, and then we'll vote on that in September. If that change is approved to our policies and procedures, then in October, when we announce a slate of officers, after we have nominations for those particular offices, we will be able to elect an assistant secretary, an assistant treasurer, and an assistant second VP. Does anybody have any questions?
And a treasurer.
Yes, but that is a different situation. That won't change. Any other questions? Okay, so that is the basic change that's going to go on in policies and procedures. Yes, Terry?
So does that mean that every year we will have to come up with a
Yes.
president
Yes.
each and every year?
Assistant. In every year from now on, if we approve this policies and procedures change, we will basically be recruiting those 3 assistant positions with the expectation that that person goes through 1 year of training and becomes that officer the next year.
But only
Yes.
for 1 year.
There still will be a first vice president.
The first vice president, president, past president, there's no change to any of those. The first vice president, president, and past president basically make up a 3-year commitment. If you become a first vice president, you are expected to move up to president and then on to past president. Now, we put together over here at the side some handouts in case you want to know what are the duties of these offices. You don't know if you want to run for it or not, but you just like to know what they do. There are handouts over here. I'd love for you to pick up one. If you have any interest at all, talk to an officer. Let me also let you know who is on the nominating committee, and you might want to tell one of those people if you're interested in becoming one of these officers. An assistant treasurer, assistant secretary, and assistant second VP. Chairing that committee will be Cheryl Volpert. On that committee will also be Sheila McClarty, Terry Jo Gray, Paula Jackson, and Michael Carr. And we have tried to pull people that have been life members that know a lot of people, you know, across our more seasoned Master Gardener group. We have some from some of the younger groups of Master Gardeners that maybe have only been in 3 to 5 years. We have some people that are from Hot Springs Village, some from Hot Springs itself. So we're trying to have a very diverse committee here. All of these have served on many different projects, and so they know a lot of people that are part of our active Master Gardener group. They may not know you though, so if you have an interest, mention it to someone, because we would love to see you take part. Okay, any other questions? All right, that brings us to the end of our business, but we have a few important announcements. P&G, of course, is next week. If you signed up, that is Tuesday and Wednesday of next week at the 4-H Center in Ferndale. We had a couple of people who wanted to have just a moment to say something. Debbie and Terry Jo have something from Hot Springs Village.
Hello, okay. I know we have talked this year about our garden in Hot Springs Village, the Hot Springs Village Xeriscape that's located at the Cortez Pavilion. We once again want to brag, and we are going to have a ribbon cutting celebration. I think you all know that we had the Project of the Year last year, and we got the Janet B. Carson County Scholarship last year, and we built a pollinator hotel. It's called the Buzz Inn. So we are having a ribbon cutting at our garden. Soon I'm going to let Terry Jo give you the details, and we want all of you to come. I know it's a long ways to the village, but it's also a long ways for us to come here. So we're inviting you to drive the other way this time, okay?
Actually, it's exactly the same distance for us to drive from the village to this meeting and all our projects. So yes, it's an official invitation for everyone to come to the Hot Springs Village Xeriscape at Cortez Pavilion. It's August the 29th at 10 a.m. We are going to send an invitation to Lynn, and hopefully she will put it on like a little e-blast. We're inviting all the people at the village, various communities, organizations. So it's a community effort. So we would love to have everybody.
Bring guests.
Please, please. Yes.
August.
Thursday, August the 29th at 10 a.m. in the village, that very far off land. So any other questions? No, actually, FT is officially going to be our photographer, so we don't have to worry about all missing this very important event. And yes?
Do they still have limited access? Do you have to tell them to?
Yes, we will make sure that we give information at both gates, the east or the west gate. So, yes.
And for all of you who are
In case you're worried about where to put in those hours for driving up there, the driving part doesn't count, but the part up there counts. It's a garden tour.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I have, Michael Carr's going to come up and say a couple of words about a gift that she's trying to get rid of. And Nancy, where's Michael? Okay, and Nancy Griscalis has said that leave your chairs as they are. The Elks have another activity that they're going to be using this setup for.
Actually, I didn't know I was going to have to speak. I have a friend who has a 6 to 8 foot cactus. It's huge. It's beautiful. She wants to donate it to Master Gardeners. And I thought instead of moving it all over the place, if anyone is interested in it, I will be glad to hook you up with her. I also have a picture of it. It's beautiful and it's big. And that's my announcement.
What kind is it?
I do not know, but I have a picture of it. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it.
Okay, our next meeting is, yes, Karen. I'm sorry, Karen. Come on up. I'm sorry. I didn't have it written down. Sorry. I should have called. That's my life.
Okay, so until is one of the educational components of each meeting, and the education was not about birds. The education was information that our committee gathered on our lifetime master gardeners, and it was unbelievable. I hope that everybody got a chance to look up here and see some of the things that the lifetimers mentioned. But we're also going to send that out in the newsletter, a few at a time, I guess, or however Elaine's going to do it. And the only reason the birds are up here is they're holding up the twine, and we all cut those out. And that was just my idea from when I was a little girl, how Snow White and Cinderella got the help from the birds. Anyway, boys don't know anything about that. The prizes this time are Debbie Bogle made this little birdhouse and decoupaged it.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
We're gonna have.
I might fall.
Aaron's working on it.
It's okay.
We need to assign something to that. We need a light turner. Yeah, we need.
Oh, well, it's just a little birdhouse. It's really cute though. It's for decorations on your porch. And then a field guide to birds. Okay, I'm gonna draw or let Gail. Marsha Oliver. Marsha Oliver. You can pick whichever one you want. Oh. Okay. Yeah. And the field guide on birds goes to Diane Arrington. Thank you.
Do we have any other business? Okay, meeting adjourned.